Living in the Power of Choice, Part 1. Living in the Power of Choice, Part 1. So I hope you join me for the other parts of this message. But this is the first part of this message, Living in the Power of Choice. This teaching, most importantly, is about using our power of choice. And there's 4 essential things we need to know. 1, the thing itself. What is it? Second thing is how it works. And the third thing is what it does, and then how to use it. As we know, the Mastermind Jesus taught us that we are to pray, but we're to pray knowing that God is always for us, that God is available to us, and be happy knowing that that is so, and not worry about things, not let anxiety take over our mind. If we let anxiety take over our mind, not only will we have the troubles that we have, that anxiety will build even greater problems for us, both physically and mentally. So let's look at the thing itself. This is from Dr. Ernest Holmes. It says, let us then approach the science of mind and spirit with awe, but not with fear, with truly a humble thought, but not with a sense that we are unworthy. Let us approach it normally, happily, willing to accept, glad to experiment, hoping and believing that as a result of our efforts we shall each derive a great good, a sound understanding of the natural laws of life as they apply to the individual and our relationship to the whole universal scheme of things. And he reminds us there are not 2 minds, only 2 names. Mind is the thing, the spirit, the causation. It is above and beyond, and yet not beyond our grasp. Beyond in that it is so big within, and that whenever we grasp it, we are it to the extent that we grasp it. But since it is infinite, we can never encompass it. We shall never encompass God, and yet we shall always be in God and of God. So mind comes under 2 classifications. There are not 2 minds, but rather 2 names employed in describing states of consciousness. The objective, or conscious, and the subjective, or unconscious. We think of the conscious state as our conscious use of mind. The subconscious, or subjective state of mind is that part of mind which is set in motion as a creative thing by the conscious state. In the subjective mind of men and women, we find the law obeying their word. The servant of this spirit. Suggestion has proved that the subconscious mind acts upon our thoughts. It is the mental law of our being and the creative factor within us. That's what Jesus was referring to when he says, it is done according to your belief. So sometimes we don't realize we believe a thing until that thing shows up in our life. So it's done according to our belief. So it's not just what we believe on a conscious level, because a lot of times people say, oh, I don't believe that, or I never believed in that. But on a subconscious level, subjective level, we have believed it, and then therefore it shows up. So it is a mental law of our being and the creative factor within us. It is unnecessary at this point to go into all the details of the subjective mind and its mode of action. It is enough to say that within us is a mental law working out the will and purposes of our conscious thoughts. This can be no other than our individual use of that greater subjective mind, which is the seat of all mental law and action, and is the servant of the eternal spirit throughout the ages. So that was from the science of mind and spirit. So we can know without doubting that the universe never plays favorites. There is no God that is keeping score or waiting to punish us. Whether it's to punish us for what the world calls our sins or to punish us for our shortcomings, it makes no difference. Because all this is just childish nonsense based on superstition. There are those who continue to preach from this false idea of God. However, the Mastermind Jesus taught the law of mind. It is done unto you according to your belief, as have all the great mystics, as Dr. Holmes points out in his Science of Mind and Spirit. So our devils and our saints are all in our mind. They are none in reality. Devils and saints are created from opinions and judgments, and we are all created good and very good, and our human foibles are just the stuff that we have allowed to diminish ourselves and our mind. But the same mind that diminishes us can and will save us. It always has, and it always will. For it is the thing itself, that invisible essence, that silent partner that is always present, and as we consciously acknowledge it, it begins its perfect work in our lives. We are all created in the same image and likeness of God, spirit, life, and truth, and this is our ultimate truth, the truth about us. And God has given us authority and dominion over all things in our lives. But it is up to us to use this power that is at our disposal. We can deny it and claim our problems and struggles, or we can affirm that we have the power working in our favor at all times. Now, all thought is creative, and as we look at life as ideas rather than conditions and circumstances, we can cultivate and foster a new idea about everything that concerns us. Excuse me. Do my finances reflect the good idea that I am holding in my mind? If not, then I must permeate my consciousness with the idea of prosperity to a greater degree. The same applies to our health and our relationships. As we affirm that which we desire to experience, we are learning to trust God and trust ourselves to create the experiences that we desire in a greater way. Now, each of us has this divine nature to create, to change our conditions and circumstances. But we must first let go of the idea that we do not. We must let go of ideas that make us feel overwhelmed and frustrated. We must never limit the power that is available to us to create and to change and to experience a greater and greater degree of our divine nature. This invisible essence, the thing itself that is closer to us than breathing. Now, how does it work? Well, the way it works. Dr. Holmes tells us the science of mind and spirit is not a special revelation of any individual. It is rather the culmination of all revelations. We take the good wherever we find it, making it our own insofar as we understand it. So the realization that good is universal, and that as much good as any individual is able to incorporate in his or her life to use, is what constitutes the science of mind and spirit and truth. The seed of perfection, he tells us, is hidden within, just as the mastermind Jesus said. The kingdom of God is within you. God and good are synonymous. So the kingdom of our good is within us. This original life is infinite. It is good. It is filled with peace. It is of the essence of purity. It is the ultimate of intelligence. It is power. It is law. It is life. It is in us. In that inner sanctuary of our own nature, hidden perhaps from objective gaze, nestles the seed perfection. But in our ignorance of the truth, we have misused the highest power we possess, the power of choice. And so great is this power, so complete is our freedom in it, so absolute the domain of law through it, that the misuse of this power has brought upon us the very conditions from which we suffer. We are bound because we are first free. The power which appears to bind us is the only power in the universe which can free us. This is why Jesus summed up his whole philosophy in this simple statement, once again, it is done unto you as you believe, or according to your faith. Faith is our belief. The great teacher looked so deeply into nature that nature revealed its fundamental simplicity to him. That belief, and that as symbolize heaven and hell. And so we suffer not because suffering is imposed upon us, but because we are ignorant of our true nature. That doesn't mean ignorant in a bad way. It just means we have not come to that point in our life where we fully understand just how much power, how much intelligence, And what a powerful spirit we have. Spirit works for us by working through us. Spirit, which is God, works for us by working through us. The thing then works for us by working through us and is us always. It cannot work for us in any other way. It spreads itself over the whole universe and shouts at us from every angle, but it can become power to us only when we recognize it as power. In other words, what God is to do for us, God must do through us. What God is to do for us, God must do through us. So therefore, the power of choice is the most important power that we have. We cannot recognize that it is while we are believing that it is not. Hence it is written, they entered not in because of unbelief. That's from the ancient wisdom, Hebrews 4:6. We may enter in because of our belief, but we cannot enter while there is unbelief. In other words, we can't make the demonstration. We can't make the healing. We can't draw to us that greater thing. So here we come to a house divided against itself. If we say we can only experience a little good, then we shall experience but a little good. But if we say with Emerson, there is no great and no small to the soul that maketh all, then we may experience a greater good because we have conceived of it. Because we have conceived of it. Let's look at that again. There is no great or no small to the soul that maketh all. That's from the great Ralph Waldo Emerson. Therefore, our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which of itself is without limit. It is ready to fill everything because it is infinite. So it is not a question of its willingness nor of its ability. It is entirely a question of our own receptivity. So as we go back to the statement of truth from the Mastermind Jesus, all that the Father hath is mine, we can understand that we can have as much as we can believe. As much as we can believe. Remember, Jesus said the Father is spirit, and we must worship him in spirit and in truth. In other words, we don't want to limit the power of God working through us. So we can have as much as we can believe, and our belief in this statement becomes our acceptance of a greater measure of good in our experiences, that we must become aware of the infinite good that is available. A few years ago, I was acquainted with a young man who received a very expensive Hugo Boss suit as a present. It was the best suit he had ever owned, and along with the suit, he received 2 Giorgio Armani ties and 2 Armani shirts to wear with the suit. This was probably the largest single purchase he had ever made in a clothing store. After a few days, when the suit had been tailored, he went to pick it up at the store. A clerk gave him the suit on a cheap hanger with a clear, thin plastic cover over it. After he told me about this, I asked him why he didn't ask the clerk for a nice garment bag that was more appropriate for the suit purchase. He said he wasn't aware that he could make such a request. And this is the case for most of us. We don't ask, so we don't get. We don't ask, so we don't get. As our mind has not been expanded to embody the greater amount of good available to us. We must permeate our consciousness with the fundamental proposition that good is without bounds. God is infinite presence. There is no point in the universe where God ends and evil lives. This is a fear-based concept that we must release. We must release it. Dr. O.C. Smith stated, fear is the child of an undeveloped consciousness. This is the great Dr. O.C. Smith. You all remember his song, God Didn't Make Little Green Apples. He was, excuse me. So he and his wife founded the City of Angels Church in Los Angeles. He was my ministerial teacher and my mentor. He said, fear is the child of an undeveloped consciousness. This is the truth. We fear that there is not going to be enough. We fear that something is too good to be true, and we fear that we will lose what we have, And fear is the antithesis of faith. Fear is, in truth, the only evil we will ever face. Knowing that God only works through us, we must also accept that God does not work through fear. Fear denies God. Fear denies our power. Fear denies our very spirit, our very nature. And fear denies that our good is available. The Mastermind Jesus gave us the truth. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It is up to us to accept how expansive, how grand, and how wonderfully marvelous this kingdom is to be, this perfection within, becoming the perfection without, because that's the way it works. That's the way it works. So what does it do? What it does. Dr. Holmes tells us we should never approach the study of this teaching rationally, never expecting to derive any benefits from it that principle does not contain. We should approach the study of the science rationally, never expecting to derive any benefits from it that its principle does not contain. For while it is true that we are immersed in an infinite intelligence, a mind that knows all things, it is also true that this intelligence can acquaint us with its ideas only as we are able and willing to receive them. The divine mind is infinite. It contains all knowledge and all wisdom. But before it can reveal its secrets, it must have an outlet. This outlet we shall be compelled to supply through our own receptive mentality. All invention, all art, all literature, all government, all law and wisdom that has come to the human race has been given to it through those who have deeply penetrated the secrets of nature and the mind of God. Perhaps the simplest way to state the proposition is to say that we are surrounded by a mind, a spirit, or intelligence that knows everything, that the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind, that the abstract essence of beauty and truth and wisdom coexist in the mind of the universe, that we also exist in it and may draw from it. But what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own mind. A unity must be established, and a conscious connection must be made before we can derive the benefits which the greater mind is willing to reveal or impart to us. Think about those words. All invention, all art, all literature, all government, all law, and all wisdom that has come to the human race has been given to it through this mind which is God. Mind and spirit are the same. Dr. Holmes tells us that the riddle of simplicity is the beautiful and true thought to realize that every man, woman stands in the shadow of a mighty mind, a pure intelligence, and a divine givingness. Not alone unto the great comes the soft tread of the unseen guest. The arrogant have not perceived the simplicity of faith, but the pure in heart see God. The farmer has seen the heavenly host in his or her field. The child has frolicked with the Spirit at play. The mother has clasped the Spirit to her breast, and the fond lover has seen Spirit in the eyes of their beloved. We look too far away for reality. Let us do away with a ponderosity of thought and approach the thing simply and quietly. It is the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. It cannot give us more. It has given all. We have not yet accepted the greatest gift. Spiritual wisdom says that God manifests through everything and is incarnated in all humankind, all life, that all is divinity and that nature herself is the body of God. The mechanical laws of nature are set and immutable, but the spontaneous recognition of these laws give us the power to bring them into practical use in everyday life and experience. Once understood, any law is available and is impersonally responsive to each and all of life. In other words, God plays no favorites. But Dr. Holmes tells us this spirit, this mind, this intelligence contains all knowledge. The universal mind contains all knowledge. It is the potential ultimate of all things. To it, all things are possible. To us, as much as possible as we can conceive according to law. Should all the wisdom in the universe be poured over us, we should yet receive only that which we are ready to understand. This is why some draw one type of knowledge and some another, and all from the same source, the source of all knowledge. Some people want to be doctors, some people want to be nurses. Scientists discovers the principles of their science. The artist embodies the spirit of their art, and the saint draws their Christ into their being. Each state of consciousness taps the same source, but has a different receptivity. Each receives what he or she asks for according to their ability to embody it. The universal is infinite. The possibility of differentiating is limitless. Life becomes to us a particular thing we need when we believe that it becomes to us that particular thing. The understanding of this is the essence of simplicity. As all numbers proceed from the fundamental unit, as all material forms are but different manifestations of one formless stuff, so all things proceed from that which is neither person, place, nor thing, but is of the essence of all things. Our thought and conscious receptivity differentiate this universal possibility by drawing it through our minds and causing it to flow into the particular channels through the conscious receptivity of our different faiths. One state of consciousness will differentiate one kind of a result, another mental state a different result. As we restate our principle, we are surrounded by an infinite possibility. It is goodness, life, law, and reason. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. Therefore, it desires to express through us. As it passes into our being, it automatically becomes the law of our lives. As we realize our every good desire is God's desire for us. We know that God is love and love is God, and this understanding makes all the difference in how we live and pray. Spiritual metaphysics offers a technique and art to prayer that no other religious or spiritual teaching offers. As we learn to understand our place in the universe and our relationship with God, as taught by the mastermind Jesus and all the great mystics, we can pray knowing that it is. In the next 2 weeks, we will focus on the method of prayer that Dr. Holmes discovered in the teachings of Jesus, prayer that gets results, that brings the power of first cause, which is God, right into the circumstances and conditions that concern us. And in the first step of this method, we recognize God as the doer. As did Jesus, I of mine own self can do nothing, he tells us. And in this declaration of truth, he realized that love responded to him spontaneously. For the Father, consciousness, and I am one. God is spontaneous, for love is always spontaneous. And so it is.